Mute.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentle drunks. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'd love to welcome you all to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is. I'm glad you guys are here. I know I certainly am glad that I'm here to be here with you. I never feel more alive than when I'm sharing the miracle of God's recovery in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that I discovered in a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. And let's share that book together tonight, shall we? As we always do, brothers and sisters, let's start with the set aside prayer. It goes a little something like this. Sing along if you know the words. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, and about the 12 steps. And please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. And as this is the fourth dimension big book study, I always like to read the two parts of our book that refer to the fourth dimension. So first, on page 8, Bill Wilson writes that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, Bill Wilson writes that we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. All right, brothers and sisters, we're going to be catapulted. We're going to be rocketed. And for the sake of the tradition and custom of the fourth dimension big book study, everyone who will, please put one hand up like this. And everybody, please put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh, yeah. I never get tired of that. Okay, well, I'm glad to be here with you guys. I'm gonna have fun tonight. I hope you all have fun tonight. It's entirely optional, but it's highly suggested. We are not a glum lot. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. I insist on enjoying life. I'm a fundamental member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe if I'm not having fun, I'm going to go damn mental. So fundamental, that's it. You know, one of the things I do like to say in all seriousness, it's a line I heard a great speaker named Russell S. If you've never heard Russell S., if you've never listened to Russell S., don't go to sleep tonight until you've listened to Russell S. Russell S. says, I'm a 1935 to 1940 member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's the type of AA I want to live, man. That is the type of AA that I live. 1935 to 1940 member of AA, brothers and sisters. That's what I love, man. So with that in mind, let's read this book, this beautiful book that was written in 1939. And let's see what we can learn from it tonight. So we're going to finish up step 1 tonight. Great. Exciting. We're going to finish up the chapter more about alcoholism tonight. We're going to finish step 1. And next week, man, we're going to kick off into a whole new way of life. It's going to be beautiful. Next week, we're going to kick off into step 2 in the chapter We Agnostics. Absolutely beautiful. I'm excited already. I was just, I've taken a couple of sponsees just over the last week through step 2, man. And it's transformational. It's a turning point in all of our lives, you know? It's where we start to make the first evolution from the problem into the solution. And here, I'm just going to pull something up. And it's kind of a basic touch point, an ongoing touch point for this study. But as you know, this is it. And so we're going to finish talking about the problem tonight. We're going to talk about the ongoing, the grave nature of alcoholism, okay? The ongoing grave nature of alcoholism. We get that from Dr. Silkworth in the chapter, The Doctor's Opinion. Dr. Silkworth was the first one to bring this to Bill Wilson, to give Bill Wilson the medical estimate, the medical diagnosis, the symptomology, the pathology for the disease of alcoholism. and we're going to finish talking about that tonight. And again, as we've talked about, I know we've talked about it for weeks now. Okay, twofold nature of the illness: physical allergy. Once I start drinking, I have no control over the amount that I can take. Mental obsession. Okay, I will have a thought, an obsession that overrules every other thought that I have. I will believe the lie. I will believe this time it's different. This time it's going to be okay. This time I'll get away with it. One of the lies I used to tell myself all the time is I'll go back to AA tomorrow, but tonight I got to just go get the heat off, okay? And I'd go in and out, and I would say that as though I had the ability to decide when I was going to start drinking and when I was going to stop. Not at all. It's like getting on a runaway train once I take that first drink, because I trigger that allergy, and I don't decide when it stops. It decides when I stop, okay? And if I'm looking back over my life, over my drinking career, which is a funny thing, man. There's only one category of people that ever talk about a drinking career, and those are members of Alcoholics Anonymous. You're not going to go, down to, the break room in your office at work and talk to people about your drinking career. There's only one group of people. Oh, and by the way, we all got fired from our career, man. Okay, we all failed miserably at that career. But if I think back about over my career, there were times when I would take a few drinks and it would be okay, and I would have the 4 or 5, maybe 6 drinks, and I would go, and it would be fine, and I wouldn't get absolutely devastated that night. There were like the 1 or 2, maybe 3 times. The majority of times I would drink and the drink would take me. There's a saying, in the Chinese have a saying: man takes a drink, drink takes a drink, and the drink takes the man. Physical allergy would kick off and it would take me and I'm gone. Okay. And we're going to continue to see that tonight in our book. Okay. We're going to, so in the chapter more about alcoholism, we met last week. We met the man of 30. Okay. And then we met Jim, and we're actually going to go through Jim's story again tonight because it's so good. Okay. And it's so important and so instructive and illustrative of our disease. Then tonight we're going to talk about the jaywalker. Okay. And then we're going to meet Fred. Okay. And in all of these cases, what we're going to see is really twofold. We're going to see alcoholic thinking, and then we're going to see Fred pick up that first drink. We'll see Jim pick up that first drink. They trigger that allergy, and then we're going to see alcoholic drinking. Okay. So first comes the thinking, then comes the drinking. Okay. And if we think about it, even when in my life there were the 2 or 3 times where, yeah, I went out to a party and I didn't turn into an absolute maniac, and I didn't, embarrass myself and humiliate myself, and I didn't get in trouble and all that stuff. And here's the thing, is that when I came into treatment, or I come to AA and they talk about, well, physical allergy, every time you drink, you trigger this allergy and you're gone. Man, I wanted to just hold on to those 3 times where it didn't happen. Okay. And I tried to hold those up and say, but wait, maybe I'm not because of these 3 times. Right. And that was just my alcoholism, trying to do anything to keep me away from this solution. Anything. All alcoholism wants, brothers and sisters, is just another drink. That's all it wants, is just another drink. Okay. And that's what I was doing with those few occasions where I didn't get into a lot of trouble. But here's the thing. This is something I've learned from living and knowing many, many, many heavy drinkers in my life. Non-alcoholic, moderate drinkers, and heavy drinkers, normal people. They can decide to get drunk, or they decide to not get drunk. I don't know about y'all, but I never had that choice. Sometimes alcoholism would give me a break and I wouldn't become an absolute maniac, but I didn't get to choose when that happened and when it didn't. Okay. Alcohol made that decision for me. Okay. I am absolutely powerless over alcohol once I put it in my body. Sometimes There were the few fleeting times where nothing bad happened. For the most part, it was a complete disaster. But it was a real revelation to me to learn with normal drinkers, normal people can sometimes choose to get drunk. Okay? New Year's Eve, man. New Year's Eve, it's where all the amateurs try to turn pro on New Year's Eve, man. You know what I'm saying? And it's a disaster. Okay? And you don't want to be anywhere near them. They're, Clancy used to joke about all the time, like, oh, I'm starting to feel it. I don't want to have any more alcohol. I'm starting to feel it. Like, brother, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that feeling. I'm not drinking for taste. I'm drinking for effect. Okay? Which brings us to the third part of our illness. Okay? Physical allergy, once I start, I can't stop. Mental obsession, this insane thought that I have that precedes the first drink. And we're going to talk about that more tonight as we finish this chapter more about alcoholism. And underlying all of that, underlying the mental obsession is the grave spiritual malady, the spiritual sickness, okay? Alcoholism, ISM, an internal spiritual malady. Dr. Silkworth characterized it as us being restless, irritable, and discontent. And that is really what is fueling the entire cycle for me, okay? And I know a lot of you are familiar with this cycle already, but this is what we're talking about here, this spiritual malady, okay? The spiritual malady comes before this insane mental obsession. And the reality, guys, alcoholism is that the positive effect of drinking on this spiritual sickness works so extremely well that eventually it warps my mind into an inability to distinguish the true from the false. Okay? The positive effect of drinking, its ability to help me feel ease and comfort instantaneously with just a couple of drinks. It works so extremely well. I had problems within me that needed to be fixed. And when I was 12 years old, I found something that fixed them immediately. And you better believe when you find something that works that powerfully, it will change my way of thinking. Okay? And that's ultimately what happens. The action of alcohol on the spiritual sickness works so positively, extremely well, that eventually it warps my mind into an inability to distinguish the true from the false. And here's the thing, and I believe this. A lot of people will say, well, raise your hand if you've ever heard anybody say in AA, well, I stopped drinking because it stopped working. Anybody ever heard anyone in AA say that before? I stopped drinking because it stopped working, right? I don't know. And that may be their experience. I will say that is not my experience. My experience is that it works. It works so extremely well all the time. And that is why I will go back to it again and again and again. I'm 16 years sober right now. Thank God. The program of Alcoholics Anonymous and God's grace, thank God. And any one of us at any time could go completely insane and go back without this program of action in my life. Without this program of action in my life and the grace of God, I could go back, okay? And I will go back if I ever let that spiritual sickness get to where it was when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous. Does that make sense to you guys? Does that make sense? So I understand, I think, what people mean when they say, like, I stopped drinking because it stopped working. But man, if it just stopped working, then we would have a one-step program that would say, step one, it stopped working, and no one would ever relapse or drink again. That's not my experience. My experience is that it works so extremely well that I will give up everything in my life to get more of it. I will give up my dignity, my integrity, my self-worth. I'll give up my job. I'll give up my family. I'll give up my health, my physical health. I'll give up, people talk about, are you going to die an alcoholic death? You can't scare us with death. You can't scare us with death. We've been dancing with death for years, man. Okay. And when I'm ready to drink, I hope I'm going to die, man. That's where I get to. Okay. That's who I become when I'm ready to drink. Okay. So, all of this to say, guys, that as of tonight, this is the end of us talking about the problem. Next week, thank God, we're going to move into learning about the solution. Okay, the solution to our problem, what Dr. Carl Jung calls a vital spiritual awakening. We're going to talk about it tonight a little bit as well. And then kicking into our program of action. The most important thing in Alcoholics Anonymous, I believe the most important word in AA is the word do, D-O. I think it's the most important word. Alcoholics Anonymous did not work for me when I needed it. AA did not work for me when I wanted it. AA only will work for me if I do it. Okay. My problem in Alcoholics Anonymous has never been that I don't know things. My problem is that I don't do things. That's my problem in Alcoholics Anonymous. You guys understand what I'm saying? Okay. We know so much. Okay. I knew so much when I got to AA. That's not my problem. My problem is not that I don't know things. My problem is that I don't do things in AA. And we're going to talk about a program of action that we need to do in order to achieve this solution to overcome the problem. So with that said, guys, let's go to our book. More About Alcoholism is the chapter. And we are going to, let's start on page 36. And we're going to talk, we're going to read through Jim again. We're going to read it very quickly. I won't speak too much about it other than to say, I believe that the words suddenly the thought are three of the most important words in Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe that. Suddenly the thought. Okay? Because that really encapsulates everything that I need to know about the mental obsession. Those three words. Suddenly, the thought. Okay? Because Jim is not drunk at this moment. Jim is a guy, he's been in and out of AA 6 times by this point. This is the 7th time. And he talks about what happens. What happens? He's irritated. He's irritated about his job. He's feeling resentful. He's full of self-pity. Doesn't like the job he has. I used to own this place. Now I got to work for this guy. This sucks. Okay. He goes out. He's sitting in a bar. He eats a sandwich, drinks a glass of milk, has another sandwich, has another glass of milk. And we're going to see here, Jim goes completely insane. This is a guy who's been to AA. He sat with the co-founders of AA, man. He was hanging out with the first 100. He was hanging out with the granddaddies of AA, getting the pure message and didn't get through to him. Okay? We cannot hear till we can hear, and we can't see till we can see. And it doesn't matter who's talking. When we are ready to hear, when we are ready to change, is when Alcoholics Anonymous will start to work for us. Hitting bottom is not a place or an event or a time or a situation. Hitting bottom is when I start to take direction. When I start to take direction from Alcoholics Anonymous that I don't believe in, that I don't think is going to work, being given to me by people that I don't even really like, okay? But I have come to believe that I have no other alternative. So let's see what happens to Fred. Fred, suddenly the thought. Brad, back to you, please. Thanks, Brad, for reading tonight.
You're welcome. Honored again. Brad Silito, recovered alcoholic. Suddenly the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach. I ordered a whiskey and poured it into the milk. I vaguely sensed I was not being any too smart, but felt reassured as I was taking the whiskey on a full stomach. The experiment went so well that I ordered another whiskey and poured it into more milk. That didn't seem to bother me, so I tried another.
Of course he did. Why? Because now what has he triggered? Yeah. Now he's triggered the physical allergy. Of course he's going to have another one and another one and another one. And then the next thing you know, he's going to start drinking tequila. Okay. And then, then he's going to call the plug. Okay. That's what happens. Okay. That's how it is, man. And he's going to be on another runaway now. And this is a guy who's been to AA. Now, let me ask you a question. If you knew Jim and you were sitting beside him in the restaurant having a sandwich and a milk, and you knew him, and he and you knew that he'd been to AA, you've seen the problems, you know his family, you know how much he's hurt his family, you know how much his job has suffered, he lost this company and now he's got another one, you know he was really struggled behind alcohol abuse and from drinking. It's a real bad problem for this guy, and you know that. And you're
What
sitting
made you wait?
beside him. If he said out loud to you, you know, I'm going to take a whiskey and put it in the milk because I think on a full stomach it's not going to give me any trouble. What would you say to him if you were sitting beside him? What, are you insane? That's what you would say. And when we talk about the insanity of alcoholism, just know it doesn't sound insane to me. In my mind, it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. I'm never going to do it again. Thank God I've recovered, until suddenly. And that is how fast it can happen. Okay. That's how
Kevin,
fast. Yeah. Did somebody call my name? Oh, sorry. That's how fast it can happen. Suddenly. Okay. We talked about this last week. Sometimes people will say, well, the mental obsession means that when I'm not drinking, I'm thinking about it all the time. And I'm always thinking about it, always thinking about it. That's not the case with Jim. He goes to get this sandwich, no intention of drinking. He says that. No intention of drinking. He is not thinking about drinking at all. What he is thinking about is how much I hate my boss, and how much I hate this job, and how I feel sorry for myself, and on and on and on and on. The feelings come first, then the thinking. Okay? And suddenly the thought, he's going to drink, and we would say, you sound insane. Now we've talked over the last week about all the different things that Bill Wilson uses in this chapter to describe the mental obsession: the illusion, the delusion, the peculiar mental twist, the strange mental blank spot. My favorite one, he calls it the desperate experiment. Why does someone attempt a desperate experiment? What's causing that desperation? What's causing that desperation is the spiritual sickness inside. Man, I suffer from emotions that make life difficult. Okay? We suffer from very sensitive emotions as alcoholics. The psychiatrist Harry Tiebout said we are overly sensitive and we are emotionally immature. And when you live that way, as an alcoholic personality, it's painful out in the world. And so what do? We find a solution. I found a solution to that. And that's the kind of thing we keep going back and back to. Okay. So I always like to point out with Jim that he's not just out of the blue drinking. If we look at the feelings that he's having, the resentment, the self-pity, the shame. Can you imagine having to go work for a boss at a company where you used to own it? Just the shame that he would feel about that. Living in untreated alcoholism, that internal spiritual malady, those painful emotions lead to this insane thought: I'm going to put whiskey on milk and suddenly I'm going to be fine. Okay. Now, we laughed about this with a sponsee of mine just the other day. He says, I vaguely sensed I wasn't being too smart. Okay. Okay. That will be on Kevin's tombstone one day. Kevin Olson died 2025, vaguely sensed he wasn't being too smart. Trust me, that line does not apply just to drinking. There are many, many, many decisions, poor decisions I have made in my life where I vaguely sensed I wasn't being too smart and went ahead and did it anyway. Okay. And that's the value of sponsorship, brothers and sisters. Okay. We need to tease those ideas out with our sponsors first before we jump in the lake. Okay. So, Brad, back to you.
thus started one more journey to the asylum for Jim. Here was the threat of commitment, the loss of family and position, to say nothing of that intense mental and physical suffering which drinking always caused him. He had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside in favor of the foolish idea that he could take whiskey if only he mixed it with milk. Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else?
Okay, so that's the specific definition in the big book of the term insanity: lack of proportion of the ability to think straight. Now, listen, I'm going to say this again because I see that there's some newer faces on the study tonight. I know I said this last week, but I'm going to say it again. And if you're new here tonight, I'm thrilled that you are here. I couldn't be happier. I'm happy to see some of the typical crowd as well, but I'm really glad that you guys are here if you're new. And this was important for me to understand in AA, that I heard the term insanity used incorrectly all the time in AA. Okay? Because people talk about insanity and what they think it means, or what they'll say at three topic disgusting meetings is, well, the insane things I did when I was drinking. So I stole the car and drove it into the church and then punched out the police officer and all the that was the insanity of my alcoholism. And according to the big book, the way that the big book describes insanity, that is not the insanity of alcoholism. The insanity of alcoholism is that after going through all of that, I will swear off and say, I will sing the alcoholic national anthem. I'm never going to drink again. And after some period of sobriety, I will have a thought. And that thought will tell me to pick up another drink. And I will kick off on the spree and do all of those terrible things again. And the insanity of alcoholism is that thought. That is the insanity of alcoholism. That I'm without defense against the first drink, and suddenly the thought will kick in. And that's what we call alcoholic thinking. Or our book will say that he had an alcoholic mind. Okay? That is alcoholic thinking. When we talk about the insanity of alcoholism, specifically, what we are talking about in AA, what our big book is talking about, is one thing and one thing only. It is the insane thought that precedes the first drink. Does that make sense, you guys? Okay? It's not the crazy things that I do when I'm drinking. A lot of people, I used to bring up the topic insanity at three topic discussion meetings so I could hear people tell their funny war stories. Okay? The insanity of drinking is the insane thought that precedes me picking up that first drink. And it's that simple, and that we need to keep it that simple, especially when we're working with newcomers, okay? Because they're going to three topic discussion meetings and they're hearing all of this stuff all day long. And it's important to zero in on exactly what our problem is and then apply a specific solution and a specific program of action to that problem. And the problem is, when we talk about the definition of the word insanity in the big book, we are talking about only the thought that precedes the first drink. Okay? Brad, back to you.
You may think this an extreme case. To us, it is not far-fetched, for this kind of thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences, but there was always the curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning, there inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink. Our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea won out. Next day, we would ask ourselves in all earnestness and sincerity, how could it have happened? In some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like.
Okay, so I just want to interject here because this was important. This is really important for me to know as well, because by the time I got to AA my last time, after being in and out of AA for 5 years, okay, taking dozens of newcomer chips and several 30-day key tags and 60 days and 90 days, 9 months one time, and I got drunk again. By that time, I knew I wasn't deluded to think, well, this time will be different. I knew it wasn't going to be different. I was going out to get drunk deliberately. Okay. I was going out. I was looking for blackout. I was looking for oblivion. Okay. I wasn't drinking socially. I was drinking suicidally. Okay. I don't know if you guys identify with that kind of drinking, but that's where I was at, man. Okay. By the final time I came to AA, that's where I was at. And I would say to myself, well, I don't think it's going to be different next time. I think that I'm just going, I was really dramatic about it. I'm trying to kill myself with drinking. I don't think it's going to be different. I know it's going to be this way. Okay. And so I would think to myself, well, maybe I don't have this disease the way my case is different. Okay. I'm a little unique in AA. I'm a little bit different. Wrong. That's me right there in that paragraph that we just read. Sometimes we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling myself justified by depression, jealousy, worry, anger, nervousness, self-pity, okay, or the like, feeling myself justified, okay, and that's me. That's how I was drinking by the end, when I came to AA. I was going out deliberately to get drunk, and the big book nails me in this paragraph. So if you are like I was, thinking, well, I don't think it's going to be different when I go out, I'm trying to, blow my brains out with booze, I'm with you. I understand. And just know Bill Wilson understands it too. And you are right there in that paragraph. Okay? Brad, back to you.
But even in this type of beginning, we're obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happened. We now see that when we begin to drink deliberately instead of casually, there was little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. Our behavior is
All
as
right, man. We see the term insane on this page 4 times, guys. Okay? Whatever the precise definition of this word is, we call this plain insanity. Then Bill says some in parallel with our sound reasoning, some inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse. The insane idea won out. Our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient. Okay, 4 times on this page. Bill refers to the insanity of alcoholism. And in all cases, don't get confused. He's talking about one thing and one thing only, and that is only the insane thought that precedes me picking up the first drink after I have sworn that I'll never do that again. Okay, Brad, guys, back to Brad. We're going to meet the jaywalker now. Okay, so we're going to see another example of what alcoholism can look like from an outside perspective when people see what we are doing to ourselves. Okay, my father said to me when I was, I don't know, maybe 20, maybe I was 20 years old. My father, and at that point, I was in and out of AA on like a weekly basis. Very painful for my parents to watch me. In fact, what my dad said was, Kevin, if someone was doing to you what you were doing to yourself, I would have gladly killed them and gladly gone to prison for a life sentence to protect you from that person. But you were doing it to yourself, and I didn't know what to do. Okay? And thank God for Al-Anon, by the way. Thank God for Al-Anon. Saved my father's life, because that pain of not being able to protect me from myself just about killed my father in depression. And Al-Anon, thank God for the men and women of Al-Anon who pulled my father out of that depression, a suicidal depression, and pulled him out of that. And simultaneously, family recovery is my family's story, man. Okay. And it is possible and it is real. And I wish it for all of you. So with that in mind, I only mention that because now what we're going to do right now is we're going to look at someone called the Jaywalker, and we're going to see, my God, this guy is insane. Why does he keep hurting himself? Why is he doing this? This is a taste of our own medicine. Reading this Jaywalker story is what it's like for our families to watch us do it to ourselves. All right, Brad, over to you.
Our behavior is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. Up to this point, you would label him as a foolish chap, having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him, and he is slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently, he is hit again, and this time has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks, he breaks both legs. On through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. Finally, he can no longer work. His wife gets a divorce, and he is held up to ridicule. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. He shuts himself up in an asylum, hoping to mend his ways. But the day he comes out, he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? You may think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. However intelligent we may have been in other respects, where alcohol has been involved, we have been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true? Some of
There's
you
that word again. Strangely insane. Okay. And that's what it looks like, guys and gals. Okay, brothers and sisters. That's what it looks like from an outside perspective for our families and our loved ones to see us continually do this to ourselves over and over and over. It's inexplicable to them. It makes no sense. After everything you've been through, why would you be drinking again? And here's what they don't understand. I remember I went to an Al Anon meeting one time. I was asked to go speak at an Al Anon meeting by a woman who used to come to this study. So a woman used to come to this study, lovely woman, Deb was her name. And she was a member of Al Anon, but she just loves Alcoholics Anonymous. She loves the big books. She came to this study. She was a member of Al Anon. She asked me to come speak at this Al Anon meeting. And I have never shied away from an opportunity to speak. So I went, and I had never spoke at an Al-Anon meeting before. That was a little, I felt like a little bit like a fox in the hen house, I got to tell you. But or maybe a hen in the fox house, I don't know, like, I don't know. But anyway, it was different, but it was good. I went and talked to them, and they had a Q&A after. I'll never forget it. They had a Q&A after, and where they were able to ask me questions. And one of the ladies said this statement. And think about it for a second. Think about how you would answer this. And then I'll tell you how I answered it. She said, "Does my daughter know how much she's hurting me when she does these things?" Now ask yourself that. Ask yourself, did you know how much you were hurting people when you did these things? Did you know? And I'm going to say, for me, guys, the answer was absolutely I did. But here's the difference between heavy drinkers and real alcoholics. Heavy drinkers hurt people in their lives. And then they say, man, I don't want to hurt people anymore. And they stop drinking as a result of the pain that they caused people. And what is inexplicable to the people that know us, the families that we're hurting, is that the knowledge of the pain that I caused other people did not make me want to get sober. It made me want to go drink again more than anything. The pain and the guilt and the shame that I felt because I knew that I hurt people. And here's the thing, every time I would go through the spree, emerging remorseful, I'd be looking back at all of the things I had just done and all the people I had just hurt. Okay. And all of that pain and all of that guilt and all of that shame that I felt as a result of doing all of that did not make me want to get sober. Okay. It made the internal spiritual sickness, my restlessness, irritability, and discontent even worse, knowing all of that. And that's why, guys, by the way, why I believe that step 9 is so important. It is not optional. If you are here on this call and you've been in AA, air quotes, and what you've really done is like steps 1, 2, and 3, half a treatment center step 4, and kind of a dishonest step 5, a bunch of different times at a bunch of different treatment centers. I can't tell you how many times I ask a guy, oh, I've been to AA many times. Really? Yeah. Have you made all of your step 9 amends? Have you cleaned up that list? And part of the reason it's so important is because the memory of the guilt and the pain and the shame of all the people looking my mom in the eyes after I knew what I did to her again last week. I got to do something to get that off of me. And the only thing I had was to go drink again. Okay. And that's what I tried to explain to this mom at this Al-Anon meeting that I went to go speak at. And that's what is inexplicable to people. What they don't they don't understand about the alcoholic condition. They don't understand about the deep spiritual pain that we're in and how that distorts our thinking, warps our minds into an inability to distinguish the truth from the false. We have got to get relief. And the only way that I have ever found relief in my life, other than to pick up a drink, is to work the 12 steps, all 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life in their entirety. And cleaning up the wreckage of the past has absolved me from that guilt and the shame and the pain. And the reason I'm an alcoholic and I'm standing here sober today is because I have found a way to feel the same sense of ease and comfort in sobriety through the 12 steps that I was always looking for in a drink. And I don't have to pick up a drink. This program has removed and allowed me to recover from the necessity to have to drink. Does that make sense, you guys? All right, Brad, back to you. And let's talk now a little bit about self-knowledge.
Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. We admit we have some of these symptoms, but we have not gone to the extremes you fellows did, nor are we likely to, for we understand ourselves so well after what you have told us that such things cannot happen again. We have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. Thanks for the information. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, though drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. But the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. This is a point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize, to smash home upon our alcoholic readers as it has been revealed to us out of bitter experience. Let us take another illustration.
Okay, so I want to explain, because I didn't know what that meant. Like, what do you mean self-knowledge? Like, what are you talking about? Here's what I understand that to mean today, and you may identify with this. How many of you have seen this cycle, the alcoholic cycle, before? Okay. Anyone who's been at this study knows. I mean, this is like the one of the main focal points of this study. Okay. Here's what that means: the inability to stay sober on self-knowledge. It means that people come to AA and they'll come to this study and they'll learn this cycle and they understand themselves so well. Isn't that what it just says? We are not going to go to the extremes you fellas did, nor are we like to, for we understand ourselves so well after what you have told us that such things cannot happen again. We understand this cycle so well. And so many, I can't tell you how many times people come to this study and they see that cycle and we explain it, we go through it, we tell our stories, and people have these like epiphany moments. They're like, my God, like that's me. That's it right there. And they think that they've discovered a solution to their problem. And I want to dispel that myth for you. I want to smash home upon our alcoholic readers, like they ask in the book, that knowing that cycle is not a solution to alcoholism. Our solution is one thing and one thing only, and that is a vital spiritual experience. A vital spiritual experience as the result of these 12 steps. That is it, okay? All that this cycle tells us about is what the problem is. We have a problem, but we need to get connected to a solution to overcome that problem through our program of action, okay? I can't tell you, you know, what's funny, and you can see evidence of it. Check out your big book. Take a look at your big book, okay? Because this happens, especially if you've been in and out of AA, you've been to a bunch of different treatment centers and so on, take a look at your book. Because what will happen is the first 43 pages, all about step one, man, they're noted and there's little sticky notes and it's highlighted and all that stuff. And it's like, man, it's funny. You get back into like step 9, 10, 11, and 12 here. It's like barely even turned the pages over. It doesn't even look like anyone's even read these things, okay? And we come and we learn about step one, and we think that we've discovered a solution to the problem, and we have not. We are absolutely unable to stay sober on the basis of self-knowledge. So now let's read about Fred, our last friend in the chapter more about alcoholism, and let's see what Fred has to say and has to teach us about two things, really. One, trying to stay sober on self-knowledge without expanding our spiritual lives. And second, that outward appearances are not always inward reality. Okay? Brad, back to you.
Brett is partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good, he has a fine home, is happily married, and the father of promising children of college age. He has so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. If ever there was a successful businessman, it was Fred. It is Fred. To all appearances, he is a stable, well-balanced individual, yet he is alcoholic. We first saw Fred about a year ago in a hospital where he had gone to recover from a bad case of jitters. It was his first experience of this kind, and he was much ashamed of it. Far from admitting he was alcoholic, he told everyone he came to the hospital to rest his nerves. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. For a few days, he was depressed about his condition. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. It never occurred to him.
Okay, so I just want to say here for anyone who doesn't know, it's kind of antiquated language. They talk about the jitters or to rest his nerves. Today we would say he had an anxiety disorder, he had a panic attack, is what we would say, and he went to the hospital. And you can infer from that that when he would have a panic attack, he would drink too much alcohol. So now he is saying, I am done altogether. I'm quitting drinking altogether. And that, brothers and sisters, is the sound of willpower. Okay? He has just sworn the alcoholic national anthem, the firm resolution, I'm never gonna drink again. Okay, this is it. He is done. Let's see what happens to Fred.
It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so. In spite of his character and standing, Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms, but he was a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about it himself. He was positive that this humiliating experience, plus the knowledge he had acquired, would keep him sober the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it.
So
We
he sat with the members of AA. He had this humiliating experience. He sat with the members of AA. They talked to him about their drinking. They took him through the cycle of alcoholism. They talked about the physical allergy. They talked about the alcoholic mind and the strange mental blank spot and the insane thought that's going to precede the next drink. And Fred rather said, no, guys, I got it. Thank you. Now that I understand, everything is going to be fine. And then the next line on page 40 is it's kind of tongue in cheek. It's kind of dark black humor, but I've seen somebody that has a T-shirt that says, we heard no more of Fred for a while. Okay, and if you've been, it's kind of dark humor, but if you've been around AA before, there's lots of people, and I've said it before. He went page 40. Okay, page 40 means we heard no more of Fred for a while. Okay, and there was lots of times when Kevin went page 42, where the people in AA did not hear more from Kevin for a while. And then let's see what happens to Fred.
We heard no more of Fred for a while. One day we were told that he was back in the hospital. This time he was quite shaky. He soon indicated he was anxious to see us. The story he told is most instructive, for here was a chap absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking, who had no excuse for drinking, who exhibited splendid judgment and determination and all his other concerns, yet was flat on his back nevertheless. Let him tell you about it. I was much impressed with what you fellows said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. I rather appreciated your ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, but I was confident it could not happen to me after what I had learned. I reasoned I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows, that I had been usually successful in licking my other personal problems, and that I would therefore be successful where you men failed. I felt I had every right to be self-confident, that it would be only a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard. In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks and began to wonder if I had not been making too hard work out of a simple matter. One day I went to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I'd been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about that. Physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased and knew my partners would be too. It was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon.
Man, that line, after reading through this so many times and going in and out of AA so many times myself and seeing so many people, that line now, it was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon, sends chills down my spine. Okay. Because and this is what I mean, guys, when I say that outward appearances are not inward reality. My first sponsor used to say to me that, Kevin, you are a master of image management. Okay. And I think probably everyone here knows what it's like to be looking good on the outside and inside know that I'm completely falling apart, and even not even be completely aware of it all the time, but know like those deep resentments that we all come when we get to AA, when we sit down and do that first step 4 inventory and we start writing out those names from the past and the deep things with our family of origin and the parents and the exes and all of that stuff, all of those resentments, and then the fears. I don't know about y'all, but I had no idea how afraid I was. Okay. Chuck Chamberlain used to talk about the two fish swimming around in the water, and one of the fish says, isn't the water beautiful? And the other fish says, what's water? He's swimming around in it. It was where he lived and moved and had his being. And that was me with fear. I was swimming in an ocean of fear and didn't even know it. And if you would have asked me, Kevin, how are you doing? You know what the first word is I learned in AA? Fantastic. Kevin, how are you doing? I'm fantastic. I'm great. I'm just so happy to be here. I'm so sober I can barely stand it. Thank you. Happy to be here. One of the most important things I learned in AA early on was to just be honest with people that I was hurting and I wasn't really good and I was going through a lot of pain, but I'm here and I'm glad that I'm here and I'm glad that I'm sober today. But to be honest about where I was at, okay? And this cat Fred, end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. And we all know, man, things can be looking real good on the inside. And deep down in our innermost selves, where we live, man, where that darkness and the screaming and the madness and the pain lives, it's still there. No matter what, no matter how good the business is going, no matter how good the relationship is going, no matter how good the finances might look, all of that stuff, if we don't deal with the inner pain, that inner turmoil, I will drink again. And we're about to see a guy, man, Fred looks good on the outside, doesn't he? Boom, ba boom, off to Washington, accounting information to, government bureau, no big deal. End of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. And we're going to see this guy go completely insane in a moment. Completely insane and destroy his life again. Out of the clear blue sky, perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. Brad?
As I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner, I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all, nothing more. I
The
ordered a cocktail.
thought, the thought came, the thought. And he's absolutely sober at this moment. Absolutely sober. This is a guy who's been hospitalized for his drinking. This is a guy who has sat with the members of AA. He knows the cycle of alcoholism. He knows the problem. And yet, sitting there, end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon, the thought occurs that this time it's going to be different. This time it's going to be okay. He attempts the desperate experiment of taking these drinks and let's see what happens.
I ordered a cocktail and my meal. Then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me a highball would be fine before going to bed, so I stepped into the bar and had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York and of finding a friendly taxi cab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me about for several days. I know little of where I went or what I said and did. Then came the hospital with unbearable mental and physical suffering. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over the evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time I had not thought of the consequences at all. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. I now remembered what my alcoholic friend had told me, how they prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come. I would drink again. They
I
they
love
had
that line, man. If I have an alcoholic mind, we're not talking about an alcoholic body. We're not talking about the physical allergy. The main problem is the alcoholic centers in my mind. If my alcoholic friends prophesized that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come, I would drink again. That's the bad news. That's the bad news. At the end of this chapter, brothers and sisters, we're going to hear the good news. All right, Brad, back to you.
they had said that though I did raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen and more. For what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then it was a crushing blow. Two of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I did not like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. I had to concede both propositions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality, such as I had exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself.
And this
Then
is
they
why
out
it's so important to take our sponsees through that cycle. We want to share stories about our own drinking with them so they can see our alcoholic mind. When they say there are heaps of evidence, they're not saying like they're like putting law textbooks in front of them. Okay, that heaps of evidence, they're talking about their own drinking. And more importantly, they're talking about their own alcoholic minds and how badly they wanted to get sober and how that gave way to some insanely trivial excuse. And then what we need to do is have our sponsees come up with 5 stories from their own life that match this cycle so that we can help them to have a fully effective step 1 experience that will catapult them into the rest of the steps. I really believe that in order for someone to really catapult through the steps in a very effective way and to really go through the work, we have to help them first have an effective step 1 experience. And that's what the members of AA did for Fred here. This process, he says, snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that he could do the job himself. He had an effective step 1 experience because these men sat with him and cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. Okay, back to you, Brad.
Then they outlined the spiritual answer and program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I'd have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. That was not easy, but the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be. Quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying and I hope more useful than the life I lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. He had felt only the first nip of the ringer. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, recently made this statement to some of us. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to two of you men whose stories I have heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless apart from divine help. Had you offered yourself as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you if I had been able to avoid it. People like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my defense must come from a higher power. That is it. And thank God we have a program of action that we can take, that we can do to get connected to that power to help us overcome this horrible alcoholic problem, this horrible alcoholic disease that we all have. And thank God for the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous and that we all have a solution. So with that said, guys, that's it for tonight. We are finished step one. Round of applause, guys. We finished step one. We are done step one for the purposes of this study. Next week, we're going to kick off into the chapter working with we agnostics. And we're going to get into this belief, coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. It's going to be brilliant. So